Welcome. This is the second chapter of the Smart Nonsense podcast. We're not doing seasons, so we'll just call it chapters. This is episode 51, and we talk about entrepreneurship, self-development, and challenging norms. Today, I'm being self-centered again. I don't want to talk about Henry. Don't want to talk about any books that are cool. We're talking about me and my life. I want to break down, I don't know exactly how we quantify it. I've given up on quantifying things. But we're going to talk about everything I've learned from 7 years working in restaurants.
You wearing a turtleneck?
Wearing a long sleeve. This is what I wore on Killy.
I like it. I like that little
wool
rolled up neck.
Yeah, you like that? When I get all dim. All right, never mind. So, Belky, can we talk about you postponing this really quick? Because I'm fed up. We have
I just
a time
tweeted
schedule.
about it too. This is one of the this is one of the first times something happened to me. I was like, oh, I'm gonna tweet this. I went to Menards about an hour ago, and I realized that when you have a lot of projects you want to get done and you're excited about, like today I'm building some bookshelves, I'm just like getting some things cleaned up, ready for you to come into town. And it's like shopping when you're hungry. Do not go to a home improvement store when you are excited to get stuff done. I spent way too much money. It took me way too much time. And the other thing was my mom came home from work early because she thinks she has COVID because one of the nurse's assistants had COVID. And so I think I'm going to live in the music box now.
I mean, I just texted you yesterday. I'm like, we should just get this thing. Get it over with.
You know, I said that way back in March. I'm not sure where I stand on that. There's a lot of politics involved, whether or not this is like the flu or not. I don't want to go there, but I am nervous. I have to go to a wedding Friday to film it, and they had me get a rapid COVID test that they paid a lot of money for, and that came back Monday, and I was negative, but now I'm not so sure.
All right.
Let's talk about the service industry.
Patient.
Let's talk about the service industry.
All right. Well, here's what's interesting, especially with this whole COVID madness, because like you see New York, all these restaurants closing down, people struggling. I see on Instagram a lot like, hey, help salvage this restaurant so they don't go out of business. And it's so true because, a lot of their revenue comes from people in person, especially drinking alcohol. And it's just really hard these days when you can only do it under certain circumstances. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about 7 summers from when I was 14 to 20. I was just being a little busboy until I was 18 and they let me serve alcohol. And then for 3 years, I was just getting ripped apart as a waiter.
So you couldn't serve. I think it's important because we're probably going to loop around at the end when you're talking about revenue, especially, being open and selling alcohol in the service industry. We've talked about this before, but your revenue or your output is directly proportional to your inputs. It's the same for like working for yourself, being a photographer, whatever. It's like whatever you put in is almost directly what you get out. That's what I hate about the service industry. That's what I've noticed in my time doing things for service. So yeah, if a restaurant can't open or it can't serve alcohol, use those 2 inputs. Well, it doesn't get those 2 outputs.
Right. And everyone involved, because it's something where you literally come and clock in. We'd always come and do our fingerprints and, that's, we're on the clock now. And you're only making money while you're working.
Trickle down, baby. Trickle down economics.
It's a brutal
world. I
world.
don't think that's what trickle down economics is.
You don't know much, but that's really, I guess so I'll give context because it kind of relates to trickle down, I guess. We were basically I was working at this rich beach club in my town.
Set the scene, baby.
It's a beach and tennis club. You have basically all the wealthiest people in Rhode Island come, and this is where they go. Actually, funny enough, and we'll get into it, but like students, like our classmates are members at this club.
Really?
And so I would serve them.
Out them.
And often this was before they
Out
knew.
them.
Yeah, I might have to. So there's a lot. I do want to kind of cover first how it changed the way that I behave in restaurants, because I see a lot of pet peeves that I now have with just how people interact with the service, everyone serving them. And then like life lessons too, really.
Even right now, in terms of how people treat servers, understand that people are going out to eat at restaurants for like unmasked, right, for their own personal gain, while these poor servers are like trying to do their job, trying to stay safe, trying to make money to pay their bills. And that dichotomy has been blowing my mind the last few months. That probably would have been you 4 or 5 years ago, summer.
I can't even imagine. Every time I see a kid going into the place where I worked, it was a great place to work, objectively speaking. I just think the industry sucks. Like it just sucks the life out of you because you're just like having to put on this smiley face all the time for people that just don't care about you. It's fucking brutal. But I think, yeah, I would never want to be in their circumstances. So understanding right now, especially, but I think the simplest thing that I do a lot more now than ever before is just treating them like a human being. It's like they come over and they're like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And most people don't even make eye contact. They just stay looking down or whatever. And it's like they don't care about their name. Like I love people that would read my name tag and be like, "Dylan, how's your day?" I'm like, "Oh, they asked me a question." Like, oh my God. It just makes you feel so great, especially when they use your name, which often people don't have name tags, but still just taking a second to care about them. It makes such a difference in the quality you get. And then especially this kind of trickles into the next point. When you don't try and nickel and dime people. You're like, all right, I'm just always going to give 20% at least, ideally more, because it's like a couple dollars here and there. Makes a huge difference for someone that's 18 years old that's working.
Let me ask you, where then would you stand on like tip culture? Would you rather have just been paid a better salary to not even have to worry about kind of performing to get your tips, performing well?
We had an interesting system that I liked. It was because it's a beach club. They didn't want, like, people are just giving member numbers. It's like super simple system. So it's always 18% unless there's a party of 6 or more, and it's 20% automatically. So it's like, it wasn't
So it's kind of like
performance
you weren't
based.
getting tipped. It was like you were
Right.
just getting a better wage.
It was just a little incentive to like work harder,
Wage.
like have more people.
That's a funny word. Tap wage. Wage gauge.
It's so weird when you check out of the English language for a second and you're like, what the dick word is that? So I
Okay,
think
continue.
as a whole, it is weird. I think it started. I feel like it started. I watched some YouTube history on this, but I feel like people would tip in the beginning in the past. I could be making this up. Tipping in the beginning in the past so they get faster service, but then it slowly migrated to afterward, and it doesn't really make sense afterward unless you're going to the same place repeatedly.
The beforehand makes a lot of sense. It's like
Yeah.
freemium, you know?
Oh, one thing that I forgot. Like, we had this 18%, right? So it's always the same. But this one guy at the end of the year, he tipped the entire staff like $100 each. And it was crazy. And like, just going out of his way, he wrote handwritten cards for everyone, just sent them $100. And now everyone for the rest of our lives is going to remember this person.
That's
And
really
what,
nice.
it costs him an extra $1,500 when he's making a lot. Like, complete game changer. So I think that's the most fundamental thing, is just treating people like humans. And then
Here's the
also,
thing, Pop, before you go on to the next one, or was it related?
no, it's less related.
Why is everybody so butthurt when they go out to eat? About everything, about where they're sitting, about which way they're facing, about how long it takes to get a menu. Why is everyone so butthurt? That's an American thing, by the way. It's like anywhere else you go out to eat, it's just like you have no plans. You're in no rush.
Dude, it's
If-
crazy because we've, like, Italy or traveling anywhere, actually, just the life is so chill, and like
It's
they're not trying to
beautiful.
push you through the system, because we were super busy, always full, especially Friday, Saturday
Oh,
nights. So it's like you were trying to, like, hey, you're putting the check down, hey, are you guys good to go? Like, you need
multiple
anything?
seatings. That's actually a pet peeve from me to you is the food gets put down and then every 3 minutes the waiter comes, how is everything? And I'm like, I just want to be French and I'll tell you when I need something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we would do it where it's like you just check in once, like 5 minutes after they start eating.
Was that
And
mandated?
no, it's just like, you kind of, after so many years, you figure out what people like and what they don't like. So it's just probably the new people that are annoyingly about that. But make sure I guess I'll get into this later. Okay.
Go on to your next.
So kind of related to that is just deciding immediately. Like, these people are like, oh, they sit over here, they sit down and like, oh, actually I want a table over there. Super annoying people. You're going to have the whole wait staff against you, especially when it comes to ordering food. Like the
Yes.
first thing you should do when you sit down, I know it's kind of hard because you're like sometimes meeting up with people, but if you decide what you want to get right out of the gate, I have this rule. The first thing I see on the menu that I like, I pick it and I close my menu. It's over. Like I'm not, tormenting in my head about, oh, do I want the lobster roll or do I want a lobster salad?
What
Like,
do you think about people asking for recommendations then? That's my mom's favorite thing to do.
oh, I do that a lot actually.
Okay. Yeah, you
I like
do.
it
You do.
because I don't like making decisions for myself, so I'll put the onus on them. But usually it depends. We didn't get to try a lot of the food, funny enough. I'd actually just kind of eat it, and after clearing plates, I was really bad. I actually got mono from that. I would eat everything. Dude, I was a fucking
Most people get
dumpster.
mono from being like high schoolers. And
No.
you're just eating fries off people's plates.
My girlfriend was like, I don't have mono. Where'd you get this from? I'm like, easy.
Hey,
But
yeah, go ahead.
um, what the fuck were we talking about right there?
Okay, let me ask you something because I had a lot of friends who are hostesses, and this is a lot of things friends and family do when we go out. It's like there is an order to where you're being seated. There is a reason to like they're trying, at least the hostesses I knew, they're trying to seat people so that it's evenly distributed amongst the wait staff so that things are timed properly so that one waiter isn't serving 8 people like appetizers. They're serving one table's appetizers, one's on the meal, and then one's finishing up. Is that true? Do you know? Like
We would have it. I can't speak for everyone because I was kind of in my own little bubble, but it's just you try and have, generally speaking, equal amounts of tables for everyone because that's where they make their tips. So
Right.
equal tables, usually the better people get the bigger tables or like more just because you don't want them fucking up
But
orders.
what
Like,
fucks it is when you sit down and then you demand to have another table because it's not your perfect little table.
yeah, people are just picky, and it's interesting because restaurants never used to exist. Like this was such a high society thing to have people waiting on you and stuff, but now it's so commonplace that it's interesting. Little status games that I want to get into a little bit later. But yeah, that's pretty much everything in terms of, or the majority
Yeah,
of
we
how I
should
behave
talk
differently.
about like ladies first, who gets this is status stuff. Who is the check put in front of at the end of the
Oh,
meal? That stuff always fascinates me, even today. Um, right? Like things are changing, obviously, equity wise. But I feel like one thing that's not is the formalities that happen at dinner. Waiters are still telling us ladies first. Um, they're still getting the ladies' chairs. And then when the check goes down, it goes down in front of my dad if we're out as a family. It's just kind of interesting.
yeah. My mom was actually on a first date with someone recently, and it was interesting because she offers to pay, and this guy was like, "Oh yeah, sure, we can split it." And that was really a big red flag, and it was a big controversy over this.
Oh,
It's like, is it just an empty offer?
it's funny. This has nothing to do with the service industry. Um,
Yeah.
is it an empty offer from your
Like
mom?
from my mom, it's like, yeah, it's an empty offer. Like, oh, he actually took me up on it.
And she's older, right? See, I would be
But
delighted. I would be delighted to split now, but she's a
would girls? I
generation
guess we
older.
need more female opinions on this podcast. But like, would girls have the same reaction if they're our age?
Yeah, we should find out.
Because I'm always like, I want to pay, like, just whatever. It's just
Yeah,
easier
you
that
pay for
way.
me.
Yeah,
You treat
setting
me.
you up. All right, whatever. That's a side point to consider. I want to expand this. Okay, just treat people nicely. Decide immediately. Be decisive in general. I think that's good life lesson. But a couple, I have like 6 points extrapolating to real life. One is work ethic, and we talked about this before, but literally this was the day after I turned 14, because the day I turned 14, I had to go like get some, what do they call those people that stamp off of like,
Passport?
no, like a librarian has to like stamp, or some person has to like stamp like, oh, you're old enough to work. This will work.
Child labor?
No, whatever.
Permit?
God damn.
Work permit?
Shut up. All right. So I had to get approved, like I'm old enough to work, but literally since the day I could work, I was working. And it really just instills this like, oh, this is what the work world is like from such an early age. And and it's cool. I remember the first day I came in, it was 4th of July because my birthday is July 1st. So that weekend, it was like July 2nd. It was a Saturday. I come in and I'm like 5 foot and maybe like 120 pounds at most. And they give me these like 45-pound trays, and I'm carrying food out to the cabanas, which are like half a mile away at least, like the closest cabana. And they give me no instructions. They're just like, "Hey kid, carry this food out to cabana number 15." And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that means. I don't know where that is. This tray is too heavy for me. I'm sweating balls because we
This
have
is
these
also like
thick
you
cotton
weren't
shirts.
proactive at this point. I'm sure you barely talked.
Well, here actually that's point number 2. But I knew the people there a little bit because there was a lot of nepotism going on because the general manager was our hockey coach in high school. But regardless, I went out to the cabanas, and you have like, there's the cabanas, and I guess they're in a ring, right? So picture a ring, and they each have their little furniture, and then there's like a sub ring where you're
And
supposed
what
to
are you
walk.
wearing? What are you wearing?
I'm wearing this tight cotton green shirt, sweat stains all over it because it's July
I
and
knew
it's
it.
like 95 degrees out, and I bike to work.
Khaki shorts?
Khaki shorts.
I
Yep.
knew it.
Nice
I
little
knew
belt.
it.
Got my white tennis shoes on. I'm looking good, but except for the sweat stains. And so I'm carrying this. I'm shaking, right? And you have the 2 rings. The one ring is for like, that's just inside your own cabana. That's your little space. The sub ring is for all the help to come and bring your food. I didn't know the 2 ring dynamic. So I'm like, all right, this is number 10. I get to number 10, but to get to 16, normally you have to go from the bottom ring. But I'm just cutting through cabanas, moving their furniture with my legs because I have no hands because I'm carrying this big tray. People are just staring at me. I'm walking through their living rooms, basically. Like 5 of them. They're all like, what the fuck is this 14-year-old doing? I finally get there, shakedown. I probably forgot some food, had to run a mile back, but it was really stressful.
Wow.
I basically, from an early start, though, the point is like, try and start working in the real world from the beginning because it's less scary. You get this whole dynamic of this is what it's like to be a real adult human being. I like that.
It's such an important angle to, right? Like I haven't waited tables, but I've done very similar things also from, 12, 13 years old. Kind of like you said, be nice to people. I think the people who have never worked in the service industry, like it shows big time. You just realize how difficult it is. And we've talked about this too. Like you as that waiter working your 8-hour shift or whatever is working no less hard than the lawyer that makes $1,500 an hour.
I was working a lot harder.
I'm sure, I'm sure. I was actually just listening to that podcast you sent me on the North Star, not the one you just sent me, Jason Fried.
Oh, yeah.
As a non-serial entrepreneur. And he was just talking about, well, kind of the 8-hour workday, but also like landscapers are working really hard. People doing manual labor are working much harder. So it's like, you can't have a respect for that. Or I think a lot of people don't have a respect for people in the service industry until or without working,
That was literally the hardest job other than like being a roofer in the summer, like carrying these 40, 50-pound trays, literally half a mile. Like the cabanas went out to the 60s, which doesn't mean anything to you, but that's really far away. And then you had to come back with the tray and people were stacking stuff on. It was miserable. And they had these stupid shirts. I'm telling you, the cotton, it was so hot. I was horrible. But now I appreciate, I'm like,
at least to hide the sweat. Or no, white. That's why clubs are all white clothing.
They switched since because we had this one friend. We called him Rufus. And man, he would sweat so bad. I think we had to change shirts just because of him. It was drenched.
More than you?
It was like so many shades darker. Yeah. And I sweat a lot.
Holy moly.
All right. So yeah, just realize like the reason why we have to work harder is because we have no leverage. Like a lot of the people, well, I guess the lawyers working equally hard because they don't have much leverage. But like the people that really make the money, the people that can give us $100 tip at the end of the year, they're the ones with leverage that have people working for them or, business automations. All right. Second, this is kind of a small point, the nepotism point.
Aren't we on like 3 or 4?
We have a lot. I'll rip the room. Get ready. Nepotism. I'm just saying that I think it makes sense because you trust a person. You know exactly what to expect from them reliability wise, which is one of the most important, like how much they care, that stuff. Belky, it looks like you're fucking sleeping over there.
Not. I'm locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded. All right.
I'm looking at you like lovingly.
So, yeah, get the head tilt.
That's a big one though. And I talked about this in Silicon Valley. Like now I'm going to talk fast. Every single company is offering some pretty lucrative referral bonuses, anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 if you can refer someone. And I think, like you say, if you are promoting somebody for a job, nepotism wise, like that's a reflection on you as well. And so if you're there and you're doing good work as kind of a filter, it makes sense that you would want to hire through people because it's expensive to hire. It's hard to hire.
What we've seen with Ian too, I guess this was episode 41, where he was saying like he now has, well, employers are reaching out to him, like employers, they're all connecting through Twitter in this case. And I think that's a big hack to a lot of this is like you can get sort of nepotism by just making friends on Twitter, and you can have 100, you can have, like, that's where leverage is. You can have infinite friends on Twitter that follow what you say. And that's how you build up that trust.
And even a sliver less than nepotism, because I've done it applying for jobs. I think you have too. It's about just like making yourself known. If you're not getting a response, like re-email, ask another question. Like keep getting your name. That's what Twitter is. It's allowed, like Ian said, it's having your name and your profile picture be something that people in that circle recognize. And if they keep seeing your name, they keep hearing your name, they keep seeing your profile picture, then when it comes time to hire, like, and they're beat down, they're just going to pick the person that's most familiar. I think that's so human.
I'm starting to have fun on Twitter too. We get Joe Navarro to respond, whose book we're reading right now.
I see you.
Oh, it's so good.
You.
It's so good.
It's a great
Ian's
book.
is actually 42, by the way. Just remembered. Great book. We'll get into it once we're in person. There's a lot of body language stuff, so we want to talk about it then when we're hanging out. All right, another one, status. And this kind of goes back to the beginning point of I'm working for these people who are also my classmates. So at school, they're equals, but here I'm suddenly below them. And almost like you wouldn't get eye contact from these people. And like, granted, I wasn't super close friends with them, but I figured they'd recognize me because I'd been to their dorm parties before. It's just weird.
Oh,
it's
you were working there like a year or two into college?
Yeah, because 18, 19, 20, I was a waiter.
Oh, okay.
So it was just fascinating because people that wouldn't care, wouldn't make eye contact at all, occasionally someone at the table would ask like, oh, are you just a student at URI, University of Rhode Island, which is right nearby? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm actually going to school in Providence. They're like, oh, PC? And I'm like, no, Brown. I'm like, oh my God, we went to Brown. And they instantly like light up. Or I know someone that went to Brown. You're going to an Ivy League. Oh my God.
Think about this though. And maybe it's just out of frequency, but why is their first question, are you a URI student? The public school for the state. It's status.
It's also really a lot of people from URI.
Okay, that's my point, the frequency. It might just be the frequency. But also it's like, how many Ivy League students from Brown are in the service industry serving me at my country club? Like it's few and far between. But that's the status thing. It's like so backwards.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just interesting to observe in real time constantly. Because anytime that question comes up, I'm like, all right, now they're going to like me better. Instantly, no.
Yeah.
It was weird. But so that's interesting. I think also 3 more quick points. We talked about this before with what's the title of the book? Calibrated questions and stuff like that.
Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference. Mirroring. And this is big in the world in general, but service industry especially. When you repeat orders, people just love you. They tip 30% more on average. And that's just, quantifying how much it matters to people that you're listening and you're mirroring back, you're parroting back what they say. It's powerful. So I would use that as much as possible. I would also use this other little trick that in my head, I was like, I'm just always going to try and be 5% different. Of like, I'm going to say this a little bit funky in some way, use one word. And it's actually words that people know, but you don't hear often. That's the best one. We talked about this with like, oh, how's your Saturday doing? Or how's your Wednesday? today's Wednesday. Yeah, how's your Wednesday doing? Whatever, stuff like that. Or be like, just I'd use different adjectives all the time. It's like, oh, how's your day doing? Oh, it's a
Doing
splendid day.
or going?
How's your day? How are you doing? Okay? I merged them. Okay, but I would say like splendid or like
Yeah,
jovial or just some weird word, and they're like, it just catches them off guard, and now they're just more engaged. They're like, oh, this person is a person.
yeah.
That's interesting.
Because we go through the motions so much. You and I have talked about this. It's like I have a stock reply for. I'm sure everyone does. Like if someone says hi to you on the street, like, "Hey, how are you?" You say the same things every time. Like, be a little different. Do something.
Dude, I can't tell you the amount of times. I forget what the word was. Maybe it was like dandy or something like that. Someone's like, oh, how are you doing? I'm like, dandy. And then literally for the next 2 weeks, every time I saw them, like, oh, you doing dandy still? And I'm like, dude, it's crazy. Just
That's
switch the
really funny.
adjective and it changes everything. Last point I want to make. This relates to how we're running this little operation, but it's imperative within the service industry is having systems in place. So we would go out, you'd have the busboy set the table, get everything ready. Then the waiter would come in, take the order, go back, send it to the expediter, and the expediter talks to the cook, talks to the expediter, talks to the food runner. Like there's just this whole integrated system, and it's crazy when it's working well. It breaks down when you start fucking up orders and just like you don't take the time to double check what order you're sending through, and then it's just chaos, absolute chaos.
Did you read Kitchen Confidential, Anthony Bourdain's book?
No.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Yeah.
He talks about, I mean, like, look, from my perspective, I actually just put this in my YouTube description as a must read is Kitchen Confidential. But from my perspective, you sit down at a restaurant, like you have no idea what's going on in the kitchen between the wait staff and the kitchen. And Anthony Bourdain outlines it beautifully. And in how beautifully he outlines it, it's like sheer chaos. Like you say, it works well in theory. Dude. But, one stove goes out at 7:30 p.m. on prime time Friday night.
I didn't mention this before, but I also hate people that would come in like 10 minutes before close. They're the worst people in the world. Everyone
really?
hates them. Don't be that person.
Because everything?
Because the kitchen's closing, they're cleaning everything, and they're like, we got a fucking order. And it's just, and they're the angriest people in the world. Like if you go back in the kitchen, they're so scary. Maybe it was just the place I worked at, but it's frightening, dude. You mess up an order. Like I was telling you, Belky, but I have a nightmare at least once a month about forgetting an order, messing up an order. I still think almost daily about this one steak. This person ordered a filet and they said like something medium. And I was like, was that medium rare or medium well? Medium rare, medium well. And I already asked them a second question. So I'm like, I'm not going to go back and ask. I'm just going to guess. I made the wrong guess. You're supposed to undercook on the guess because you can always cook it more. I said to the kitchen medium well.
Wait, that's a good trick. If you're going to guess under.
Always undercook because you can always throw it back on.
Yeah.
I said medium well, which is the worst thing you can do. I sent that back to the kitchen, comes back out. The lady's like, hey, they overcooked it. And now the kitchen's freaking on me for wasting a $20 filet. I still think about it to this day.
But here's my thing too. If I get that overcooked piece of meat, I'm going to eat it. I'm going to eat it. My parents and their friends, like they want to make a big stink about the whole thing. And I'm like, you have no idea. Our poor server, Dylan, is going to have nightmares for the rest of his life.
Literally.
Because you won't eat that medium well steak.
That is actually funny. I don't want to put the blame on her because it's definitely on me.
No, I get it.
But it is funny because I mean, my mom, I'll put her on blast, but she does it a lot. Like always criticizing everything. I'm like, hey, just maybe tell them afterward or something, but it's like a low-key deal, or never tell them, just, maybe
I just suck it up.
Whatever. It's probably just a one-time mess up or something. Whatever. Granted, it's like a $35 meal, so I should probably get it right. But regardless, it's literally been tormenting me.
So you've got the dichotomy. It's like, well, yeah, okay. On the one hand, the paying customer is always right. Like that's what we do in the service industry. But then it's like, if you've actually been a server, you understand how inconsequential the like temperature of your steak is. And so I just suck it up. I'm curious because she's probably listening. We've already put her on blast. Has your mom spent time. Well, she knows about your work. Like, did she ever work in the service industry or do similar stuff?
I don't actually really
You
know.
need to talk to her more.
Hmm.
You need to
All
talk
right.
to her more.
Well,
That's your homework for today. Is ask her.
no. This isn't gonna get released till I'm in Chicago, so we're good. Okay. Yeah, be nice to people, not your family apparently. But I think there's so much. I think anyone, like, if you haven't worked either like landscaping or working in a
Yeah.
restaurant or whatever service, like, just flipping stuff on eBay, like, you learn so much about
No,
how
that's not even
much,
service.
well, whatever,
My
wedding
first job was
photography.
a T-ball umpire. And
Dude.
Pop, why the hell are 45-year-old parents screaming because the 12-year-old made like a less than par call? It was horrible. Talk about nightmares. Let's do an episode on that. Did you ever
Yeah.
ump?
No, but my friend Jack Hall. Oh man, I remember he was tormented. He had to quit.
That and
They just
reffing,
rattled
yeah.
him so much.
It's terrible.
And you can't win because you have two sides, and there's just no good call ever.
It's terrible.
I was a referee in hockey, and I did the same thing. Like, I was a good hockey player. Like, I understood hockey. But the parents, I think they knew less than me too. I'm like, I'm playing at a higher level than you probably ever played, and you're
right.
yelling at me about the calls. Like,
Right.
it's just mind blowing. But whatever, just like understand what hard work is, and you appreciate it so much more for the rest of your life. Sometimes you'll be tormented like me. I still have nightmares about forgetting orders, but it's whatever. It's the cost that we all go through. All right, tomorrow, Belky, what do we have?
Talking about we are talking to Matt Sherman, the creator of Forward Thinking Founders. I think we're going to talk about some startups, have an awesome conversation, throw in some Dunbar, and see what he's up to.
I love it. We're figuring out this Twitter world, and it's so fun because, like I said, we're connecting with authors of books we're reading. I think we're going to get them on the podcast soon. It's only going to get better and better for everyone involved. So I'm excited, Belky. I know.
Very excited.
All right. Well, you got to make sure that
what do you know?
You don't have COVID. Well, we're not going to have guests in person anyway, so get COVID as much as you want. But that's it.
Tough day.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Treat your servers better, and smile. 5% difference. There we go.
Got it. See ya.
All right. Peace, Belky.